Madam Chair, we are ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Thank you for participating in the Western Riverside Council of Governments Executive Committee meeting. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask County Supervisor Jeff Hewitt for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Would you all join me in our pledge of allegiance? Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. At this time, members of the public can address the committee regarding any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee that are not separately listed on the agenda. Members of the public will have an opportunity to speak on agendized items at the time the item is called for discussion. No action may be taken on items not listed on agenda unless authorized by law. Whenever possible, lengthy testimony should be presented to the committee in writing and only pertinent points presented orally. Do you have any public comments?
I have no requests.
All right. We're going to go on and move on to consent calendar. All items listed under the consent calendar are considered to be routine and may be enacted by one motion. Prior to the motion, to consider any action of the committee by any public comments or any of the consent items will be heard. Do any members of the public wish to comment on the consent calendar?
I see no requests. Madam Chair, we have not conducted roll call though.
Oh, let's do our roll
Let's
call.
go.
vote. Yeah, let's start there.
Would you like me to go ahead and start?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. When I call your jurisdiction, if you would please state your name, City of Banning, Beaumont,
Mike Laura.
Calamasa,
Wendy Hewitt.
Canyon Lake, Corona,
Jackie Casillas.
Eastvale,
Christian Dinko.
Hemet,
Russ Brown,
Rupa Valley,
Chris Barajas.
Lake Elsinore, Menifee,
Bentley Spire,
Moreno Valley,
Ed Delgado,
Murrieta,
Christy White,
Norco,
Kevin Bash,
Harris,
Rita Rogers,
Riverside, San Jacinto,
Crystal Ruiz,
Temecula,
James Stewart,
Wildemar, County District 1,
And Jeffries.
District 2,
Karen Spiegel.
District 3, District 5,
Jeff Hewitt.
Eastern Municipal Water District.
Tomawad,
Thank you. Western Municipal Water District,
Brenda Denstead.
Riverside County Superintendent of Schools. And WRCOG TAC Chair. That concludes roll call. We have one.
This is Dale Welty, Canyon Lake. I don't think I was listed.
Thank you, sir. Gotcha.
Brian Tizzle, Lake Elsinore. I think you skipped me too.
Thank you. Let's go back over those who didn't answer. City of Banning. Riverside. Wildemar. County District 3. And Eastern Municipal Water District. All right, Madam Chair, we have one.
thank you. We'll go back to consent calendar. If any member of the committee requests a specific item to be pulled for discussion from the consent calendar, we will have that discussion and then vote on the consent calendar as a whole to avoid multiple roll call votes. Do any members of the committee have any questions regarding any of the consent items?
Move the entire consent calendar.
We have a motion by County Supervisor Hewitt. Do I have a second?
Harris will second.
Harris from Rita Rogers from Harris will second. Go ahead and do the vote, please.
Thank you, City of Banning. Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake. Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Corona. Corona,
Sorry. Yes.
thank you. Eastvale,
Yes.
Emmett,
yes.
Rupa Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee,
Yes.
Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes,
Norco,
yes,
Harris,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
San Jacinto,
Yes.
Temecula,
Yes.
Wildemar, County District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 5,
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District.
Yes.
Mr. Mawad, this is for the executive committee members.
I apologize.
No, no worries. And Western Municipal Water District?
Yes, except on 10th. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. That concludes roll call for the consent calendar and it passes unanimously.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to the reports and discussions. Members of the public will have an opportunity to speak on an agendized item at the time the item is called for discussion. We're going to start with the PACE Administrative and Legal Services. I'm going to turn it over to Kurt Wilson.
And Madam Chair, this is Steve DeBon. I just want to note that this item involves Best Best and Krieger. So I've asked Janice to remove myself, and I think Jeff Dunn is also on the Zoom to the waiting room during this item. And I think Scott is present, in which case he'll just leave the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Hold on, Kurt, let me move to the waiting room, please.
Just let me know when you're done. Yeah.
And then just for clarification purposes, is there anyone else from BBK online? I don't see anyone.
Janice, you see a Jeffrey Dunn? Yeah, he needs to go to the waiting room.
Thank you.
There he is. Thank you.
Right, Madam Chair, members of the committee, this item is being brought to you again. We have the presentation prepared for you, but because it's the same item that you've seen before, we wouldn't give you the option. So as a reminder, this is for the legal services related to PACE, the PACE program. This is something that is currently wrapped up in the greater sort of all-encompassing contract with BB&K. We are seeking to pull that out and go through the competitive process. We had an ad hoc committee made up of members of the executive committee who oversaw the process, went out to bid twice, came back, made a recommendation to administration and finance, who then made a recommendation to this body to go forward and award the agreement to BB&K. The last time we had the discussion, the request was to pause it to allow some time for a few other things to happen. Those things have happened and that time has passed. So we wanted to bring this back to you to see if you are prepared to make a decision or if you would like to give us additional direction on that. Again, the recommendation is the same as where we left off, which is to award that agreement to BB&K. And we're happy to either answer questions or provide the PowerPoint presentation that you saw last time.
All right, so Janice, do you have any members of the public who have any questions or comments on this item?
I do not.
Okay, and do any of the committee members have any questions or comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a motion on the item in a second.
Lake Elsinore gives the motion.
Corona seconds.
So we have Lake Elsinore, Brian Tisdale for the motion and Jackie Casillas for the second. Please do the roll call vote.
City of Banning, Beaumont,
Yes.
Calamasa,
Yes.
Canyon Lake,
Yes.
Corona,
Yes.
Eastdale,
Yes.
Hammett,
Yes.
Roper Valley,
Yes.
Lake Elsinore,
Yes.
Menifee.
Yes.
Moreno Valley,
Yes.
Murrieta,
Yes.
Norco,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Riverside,
Yes.
San Jacinto,
Yes.
Temecula,
Yes.
Wildemar, County District 1,
No.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3, District 5,
Yes.
Eastern Municipal Water District, and Western Municipal Water District.
Yes.
Thank you. That item passes with 1 no.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you
gonna
very
move
much.
on.
Julian, if you could let Scott know he can come back in the room, please. Oh,
He's on his way.
Kirk on. Let me let Steve and Jeffrey back in. Okay, they're both back in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to item 6B, which is Tump Nexus study. It's an activities update from WR Parks Chris Gray on the Nexus. Chris?
Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the committee. As Chair Ruiz said, I'm Chris Gray with WRCOG, here to give you an update on our Nexus study and some related activities. Next slide, please. So on October 4th, 2021, you all authorized us to begin work on a TUMP Nexus study update. And the reasons for this is the Nexus study identifies the projects that mitigate traffic associated with new development. It determines the cost of these projects and establishes the development fee schedule to fund these projects and therefore mitigate the impacts of new development projects. Next slide, please. So I'm here today to just provide you updates on 3 key inputs for the Nexus study, discuss schedule for completion of the study, and also share with you we have some related efforts which touch on the Nexus study. They include our exploration of a VMT mitigation effort, our development fee comparison study, and also a study we're doing on residential trip generation. Next slide, please. So there's, in the end, 3 key Nexus study inputs. There's the socioeconomic forecast, there's the roadway network, and there are the project cost factors. I'm going to give you an update on each of those 3 items today. Next slide. So in the socioeconomic forecast, those forecasts are complete. We're using the forecast from SCAG's Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy. We have made the extra effort to meet with each of the jurisdictions and confirm the allocations of growth within sub-areas within the city. And I will tell you that based on SCAG forecasts, we're projecting approximately 40% growth in household and populations and employment over the next 20 years. So what's important to note is our Nexus study forecast is done out to a particular year, which in this case is 2045, which is the out year of SCAG's RTP. It does not correspond to the build out of an individual member agency, but instead is a projection of growth over a 25-year period. Next slide, please. So one of our main efforts over the past several months has been meeting with each jurisdiction and determining if there are projects which member agencies want to add to the network. Based on one-on-one meetings that myself, Cameron Brown, and other WRCOG staff members have had with member agencies, approximately 50 new projects were identified. There was a request to add a new interchange in the city of Menifee, which I'll discuss in a second. There were some roadway widenings. There were also some new roadways, and also a request to add projects for upgrades for what are called intelligent transportation systems, which is signal coordination and other technologies to improve traffic flow. Next slide. So as an example, Supervisor Jeffries, you will recall from our zone meeting, you noted that the county had asked that Markham Road be included in the Nexus study. That request has been, we are adding that project to the Nexus study for evaluation. The Garbani Road interchange in the city of Menifee, and just a couple more projects, just as examples, there was a request to add 7th Street in San Jacinto and Calle de Oso and Murrieta. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share with everyone is the process by which projects are formally added to the Nexus study. Step 1 is to get the request. Step 2 is then we add them to the transportation model that's used in the Nexus study. And then we evaluate whether the project meets certain criteria. One of the key criteria is volume. For a project to be included in the Nexus study, it has to carry more than 25,000 cars per day. For a project to be mitigated per AB 1600, it must be operating over the adopted threshold for capacity. And we also want projects that provide regional connectivity. Once the modeling is complete, there will be an interim step where we'll meet with the jurisdictions. We'll share with them the modeling results. And then if there's additional analysis that needs to be done by WRCOG and our consultants, we are happy to do that. Next slide, please. So the final input to our Nexus study is project cost estimates. Those are based on actual projects that have been completed within the subregion, roughly within the last 2 years. That work is going to start in August, and we anticipate that'll be about 2 to 3 months. What I did want to say is that as part of this process, we'll be going to our partner agencies like RCTC, Caltrans, and also our member agencies to determine what costs they have incurred in recent construction to make sure that our Nexus study reflects actual costs for various items such as land, concrete, asphalt, labor, and other similar items. Next slide, please. So what that puts us into is a position where in the next roughly 2 months, we'll have all of the input data we need for the Nexus study, and we'll begin running a series of calculations. We will also, throughout the process, be providing additional updates to the Public Works directors, the TAC, yourself. And then once those calculations are done, we will know what the revised fee study. So what I wanted to just share with everyone that if you haven't been through a Nexus study update, it's actually a 2-step process. WRCOG prepares the Nexus study, and we ask for the various WRCOG committees to approve the Nexus study document itself. Once the Nexus study document is approved, the executive committee, you all, set the actual fee schedule. So the Nexus study sets the maximum fee that is allowed, but the fee study is the actual fees which are assessed on development. Next slide, please. So I want to also quickly run through our 3 efforts which are related to the Nexus study that we're working on concurrently that may be of interest to you. Next slide. So we have spent a significant amount of time over the past several months investigating the issue of VMT mitigation. About 6 or 7 years ago, the state of California passed what's called SB 743, which requires all projects to mitigate their impacts on vehicle miles traveled and changes how transportation analysis was done. This legislation was finally implemented and took effect in 2021. We have been contacted by a number of developers, project applicants, and member agencies who have asked us if we could provide mitigation for VMT impacts. However, there's no existing program or method to mitigate VMT impacts currently. We have been meeting regularly with RCTC and RTA to determine their level of interest in some sort of regional approach to mitigation. We have determined that they are interested in some sort of regional approach to mitigation. The cities of Europa Valley, Moreno Valley, and Riverside, their city staff has asked us to assist them with some sort of mitigation approach. So we are continuing to work on this, and we, based on our internal schedule, plan on wrapping this effort up by December 2022. Next slide, please. So another related effort is our assessment of regional impact fees across the WRCOG subregion. We did our first study of this kind in 2017. It was updated in 2019. And what it is essentially is a compendium of all impact fees assessed on development within our subregion. And we also include jurisdictions in San Bernardino County and the Coachella Valley for reference. The data collection is complete on this effort, and we are in the process of finalizing the various impact fee calculations, and we will begin sharing this information with our members. We will begin with the planning directors and the city managers in fall of 2022. And then once we have shared the initial information with our member agencies, we'll be bringing the study back to you so you can understand the depth and breadth of development impact fees across the region. Next slide, please. And then finally, we've undertaken an effort to look at, to better understand travel behavior across our region. For those of you who attended our day after the executive committee meeting after General Assembly, we shared with you a travel survey we had done. Well, we've done we're doing a more detailed analysis on residential trip generation. And the reason why we're doing that is AB 602 was passed, and it requires that all jurisdictions that assess impact fees to assess them on a per square foot basis. Currently, WRCOG, like almost every other jurisdiction in California, assess residential impact fees on a per unit basis. And so our work is assessing the extent to which travel behavior varies by household size. One would think that smaller houses generate few trips. We would like to determine if that is true. And so we anticipate this study, like some of our other companion efforts, being completed by 2022. We have currently completed an analysis of roughly a dozen or so neighborhoods within the WRCOG region with an eye towards geographic diversity. So we've picked some in the past, we've picked some in the southwestern Riverside County. We've also picked some in the what I would call central and northwestern areas as well. So we want to make sure that the region is well represented in terms of the study. We've done all the data collection. We haven't done any statistical analysis yet, so I can't give you the answer. But I did want to let you know that the study is well underway. And like our other efforts, we plan on being complete by December 2022. Next slide, please. So, Madam Chair, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions members of the committee might have. This is a receive and file action, no action needed this time, but as I said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does any of the committee members have any questions or comments?
Question from Eastville.
Eastville Christian, go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to ask a question, and I hope it's not a big question. I'm trying to get a synopsis and a better understanding. On the VMT, the vehicle miles traveled, and we said trying to capture those impacts. I'm curious to understand what that means. Does that mean vehicle miles traveled out of the home city and back to the home city, or into the home city and out, or is it both?
Yeah, so it's vehicle miles traveled anytime you, for example, you leaving your driveway, the state considers that a vehicle mile traveled. So every time a person at a project would leave that project or drive out of that project, that is a vehicle miles traveled. That is a very significant change from how we've assessed transportation impacts. Many of you are familiar with level of service, and level service is a much more straightforward way to mitigate. So essentially, if a project had a level service impact, you would widen a road, you would add a traffic signal. Mitigating VMT is far more difficult. And the reason why we're being asked by some of our member agencies to help them with this effort is they do not have any way of mitigating VMT impact. So for example, a VMT mitigation measure might be providing bus passes. It might be building a bike lane. So anything that reduces people driving is a VMT mitigation measure.
Thank you. And that's different than the like the traffic flow study that was provided. It's totally
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a request when the Nexus study comes before us after, somewhere between step 1 and step 2 of the Nexus study process. I'd really appreciate a historical context of when WRCOG has had past Nexus studies and what the results of those were. If the executive committees have set fee schedules, what they were. We can go as far back as, 5-10 years, whatever you think is appropriate, but I'd like that context. Yep. We have that discussion.
No, I'm happy to do that. Just for everyone's benefit, we have had a number of Nexus studies that were approved. I believe 5 to be exact, and we had 1 Nexus study that was not approved. And it was before I arrived at WRCOG. So while that is not a desired outcome, the majority of our Nexus studies have been approved, but I would be happy to share with you since the inception of the program. And I would also say there have been a number of instances in which the Nexus study was approved, yet the adopted fee was less than or different from what was in the Nexus study.
All of that would be really helpful to know.
Happy to share all of that with you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Mike Lara?
Yeah, Chris, have you seen or heard from any jurisdictions in regards to the VMT as far as not requiring infrastructure improvements? We had a project recently submitted for commercial warehousing where the VMT didn't show that any infrastructure improvements were required, which is a cause for concern. Right. As opposed to when you look at level of service, which was adopted by us, it did, and it's the only way that we're going to be able to get any improvements. Have you heard that?
Yeah, it's really a challenge for member aid. I would say for folks across the entire state, in particular, because the average layperson really does understand level of service. They don't understand VMT. So what I would say is we've seen both. We've seen large projects that are able to essentially not have to build anything by citing VMT, which is why something like TUMF is so important, or having impact fees, because the state has clearly said SB 743 does not trump impact fees. So where folks have tried to work around is make sure they have some sort of impact fee or exaction program. But what's really been challenging is what I would say is the case-by-case exactions, which many of you are familiar with. Like, well, you're going to put in 500 homes. We want you to build a traffic signal. It's much harder to make that nexus now. And so that's why we've we've shared this, and I will also say, all this information's been shared with your public works directors and your planning directors, your city managers, and we've, to the extent we can, provided guidance and information to all to those staff members so they can navigate through these issues because they're extremely difficult.
Well, and the reason, thank you, Chris. And the reason I bring that up is that my concern would be is its impact on possibly reducing the TUMP fees. Do you see that as a concern as well?
No, I don't, because what happens is that this is another discussion, but if you look at how VMT has performed across the state, it has increased exponentially year to year, beyond the level driven by population growth. So people are driving more than they historically have done. Now, COVID has changed that a little bit, but up to 2019, VMT had been growing on a per capita basis substantially for about 10 years straight. So it's, I don't believe it will have an impact, but it is something we're very mindful of. And the reason why we're looking at VMT mitigation is we don't want it to negatively affect TUMP or our member agencies, in keeping with our other programs.
Okay, two more quick questions. Is there a spreadsheet of the projects that are going to be in the Nexus study by zone by chance?
Yes, it's actually attached to the staff report. There is an Excel table. I will note, we did, the city of Calamasa had at one point had asked for a project to be included. That project, Roberts Road, they subsequently asked to remove that. So, but that list with that one exception is correct. And Mr. Laura, I'd be happy to send that to you separately.
Okay, and then my last question is on the square footage requirement calculation for the fee. Does that also affect multifamily?
It does. It's our understanding that they are asking that all residential fees be calculated on a per square foot basis.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Chris.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? This is a receive and file. Thank you, Chris, for all your work. I'm going to go on to item 6C, recognition of employee milestones by Kurt Wilson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. So as you know, we've had a lot going on recently here at WRCOG. While there are a few items that have sort of overshadowed our efforts, in the background, we've had some folks who've just been churning away, doing some wonderful work for a very long time. That institutional knowledge is a very big deal for us. So I'm hoping you will join me in congratulating, as we go into the next slide here, if you'll join me in congratulating these folks who have reached their milestones with employment here at WRCOG. As you're aware, we do them in 5-year increments. So we have 4 people this year to recognize. So I'd ask that you sort of join me in celebrating their accomplishments and all that they've achieved.
That's a big deal.
I think it's a very big deal. Yeah.
That's a huge deal.
75 years.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. Anybody well, let me go here first. Hang on. Janice, do any members of the public have any questions or comments on that item?
I have no requests.
All right, do any of the committee members have any comments or questions? I just want to send my utmost sincere thank you to those employees. Seeing, 15 years is a lot nowadays. 5 years is a lot nowadays. So that's absolutely amazing. So we really appreciate each and every one of you. We're going to move on to item 6D. It's drought update by the general managers of Eastern and municipal water districts. Let's get that going. Who's going to be first, Joe or Craig?
I'll go ahead and kick it off for Joe since he's doing all the talking during the presentation. So I'll take my 30 seconds ahead of time, Joe, if that's okay with you. Yeah, regional drought update. Thank you very much for asking us to come and talk about this. There is drought if you haven't heard the news or watched the news, and it's significant. So a lot of times the news will talk about droughts, and I think the public isn't so motivated to pay attention, but this is significant. This is one of the driest 3-year periods we've ever had on record, and the driest 3-month period we had in January, February, and March this year, which is when we accumulate all of our rainfall and snowpack, which we live off of all summer. So it is very significant, and actions need to be taken. So here's kind of the outline for our topics today for the talk. Drought water supply update, Joe's going to give that section. He's also going to talk about the current drought mitigation measures. I'll come back and talk about Solve the Water Crisis Coalition, which is a movement to try and fix this problem long term. And then we'll talk about some opportunities for continued collaboration. Next slide. Next slide. So maybe give you a little bit of background about Western. So Western Municipal Water District was formed back in 1953. We provide water, wastewater, and recycled water. We're 527 square miles. We have about 1 million customers within our service area. We're a wholesaler and a retailer. So we retail to about 25,000 connections, which is about 100,000 people. But then we also provide water to cities and other water districts. So we have 14 partnerships with other agencies. Like Eastern, we are a member of the Metropolitan Water District. Brenda Denstedt is the president of our board and our representative at Metropolitan, and that's where we play in statewide water issues, and I guess water issues all across the West with Colorado River. And lots of information's coming out about the Colorado River and the shortages and the cutbacks they're calling for this week. So you'll be seeing that in the news this week. Western has done a lot to try and improve our water supply mix. 5 years ago, for our retail customers, we were almost 100% imported water coming, and our water comes from Northern California, from Lake Oroville. We've done a lot of local resource development, just like Eastern has, and we've changed that mix from 100% imported to about 62% imported. So a lot of movement to try and develop those local water supplies so we're not so dependent upon Metropolitan. All right, next slide, and let me turn it over to Joe, and he can get started on the Eastern background and talk about some of the other issues. Joe?
Thank you, Craig, and thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to be here. Similar to Western, we also serve about 1 million population in Western Riverside County. We are primarily a retailer, but we also wholesale water to other sub-agencies within our service area. As you can see here in the exhibit, our service area covers about 558 square miles from Moreno Valley up north all the way down to Temecula, Murrieta, to the south on the east, Hemet, San Jacinto, all the way to the Interstate 215 corridor, including cities of Paris and Menifee. Currently, our board president is Phil Pauley, and we are the 6th largest public retail water agency in the state. Similar to Western, we're also a Metropolitan Water District member. Our water portfolio is about 50% locally produced and 50% imported from Metropolitan. And for all of us in Western Riverside, Eastern, Western, and others, the unique aspect is that not only do we want to make certain we can serve water reliably, but we also have to meet the growth. I think earlier this morning or this afternoon, there was discussion about the forecast over the next 25 years of growth. We are the fastest growing region in the state in Riverside, and specifically Western Riverside. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So let's dive into some of the details on the drought conditions. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So this is not news to anyone, but we are in the 3rd year of a serious drought. In fact, it's not only the state, but the entire Western US is in a unprecedented drought condition. Looking at the conditions within the state, 97%, almost the entirety of the whole state is in a severe drought, and about 60% is in extreme drought. The drought is not only impacting water supply from Northern California, the State Water Project, but also the Colorado River that's been in a 20-year drought condition. So as Craig mentioned earlier, this is a serious situation that we are all facing. Let's go on to the next slide. So this slide gives you a snapshot of the current conditions within the major water reservoirs throughout the state. All the way up north, Lake Shasta, Lake Oroville, which are approximately 40 and 47% at capacity, down to Southern California, specifically the reservoirs that serve us in Western Riverside, Diamond Valley Lake being truly a major source of supply for us, given that currently we're not taking any state water project. Both Eastern and Western are using water from Diamond Valley Lake as well as the Colorado River, given the shortages on the state water project. And Lake Massac use is at 71%, Diamond Valley Lake at 67%. You know, that 537,000 acre feet in Diamond Valley Lake, typically we draw down about 116,000 acre foot a year. If conditions don't improve, we will see that drawdown by middle of next year. And there's concerns about the continued gravity feed from Diamond Valley Lake to the Mills filtration plant. So, but fortunately, as I said, all of us can be thankful that we have that reservoir as a major supply for us to help us navigate through the current drought conditions. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So when we look at import supplies, there's the supply from up north, the Sierra Nevada mountains, the State Water Project. As you may be aware, currently the allocation is 5% on the State Water Project. In fact, some portions of the metropolitan service area, and I'll share with you those details, are in what's called health and safety delivery mode, essentially delivery just to meet human consumption. Overall, we've had 70% of normal snowpack this year and about 60% of normal rainfall. So significant impact on the State Water Project and the supplies from Northern California. On the Colorado River, both Lake Powell and Lake Mead are at about 0.25% full of as far as their capacity. The concern to the Western US is not only in terms of water supply, but also hydroelectric power generation. So the Bureau of Reclamation has essentially provided the 7 states that share the Colorado River an ultimatum. Commissioner Camille Touton, during testimony recently, essentially asked the 7 states to come together and agree on reducing their take from the Colorado River next year by somewhere between 2 million to 4 million acre feet for next year. That's a significant reduction. Now, all eyes are on the negotiations that are occurring. Hopefully, the states can come together, and I know Metropolitan is at the table as well. If they are not able to agree on that reduction, then the Bureau has indicated that they would step in and mandate reductions, which are anticipated to be significant. So we're all watching those negotiations as they unfold and trying to interpret how they will impact water supply to Southern California. Let's go on to the next slide. So current drought mitigation measures. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So there's been a series of actions by the governor and the state in response to the drought conditions starting back in October of 2021, when the governor declared a drought emergency statewide. In November of last year, Metropolitan Water District declares drought emergency, and essentially beginning that process of shifting the supplies off of the State Water Project to the Colorado River. And there are a number of agencies that serve about 6 million people within metropolitan service area that are currently within this health and safety delivery mode. Essentially, they have 2 pathways to comply with Metropolitan's requirements. Either have a volumetric compliance based on 55 gallons per day per person, or only have 1 day of outdoor watering. And that 1 day of outdoor watering for the 6 million residents of Southern California, that doesn't encompass or does not extend to Eastern or Western. But they were actually initially expecting that by the end of July, they may have to go to 0 days of outdoor watering. Now that, based on the response they've had so far from those agencies, and meaning the customers have reduced their consumption, Metropolitan has decided not to make that decision end of the month. They're going to kick it out maybe another month or so. If things continue to improve in terms of reduced demand, they may not have to go to that level. That's something they're going to continue to monitor. As Craig mentioned, the beginning of the year, although we had a very wet December, January, March, February were driest on record, and we continue to see below average precipitation overall this year. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So I mentioned the 6 million people and member agencies that are subject to the health and safety delivery. And these highlighted agencies, including Inland Empire Utilities Agency, Three Valleys, Upper San Gabriel, Callegas, Las Virgenes, LA. These are the agencies that are having to comply with either the 1 day a week outdoor watering limits or the volumetric limits based on the 55 gallons per person per day. Again, so far, because of availability of stored water in Diamond Valley Lake and our ability to shift our supplies from State Water Project to Colorado River, as well as DVL water, both Western and Eastern are not currently impacted by the current restrictions. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So the state's response so far has been, the governor has called on 15% voluntary water reductions. We're watching that carefully. We're concerned that in August, that may become mandatory. It all depends on the response from those agencies that I mentioned that are currently in the health and safety delivery mode, as well as negotiations on the Colorado River. So I think there is a concern that later this year, possibly as early as August, the governor may step in and enact mandatory restrictions. What the governor has done is he has banned the use of potable water for non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and institutional customers. So for example, street medians, parkways that are only used for decorative purposes, that they're not used for recreational purposes, and including HOAs are impacted by this ban. So both Western and Eastern have, our respective boards have taken action to adopt these restrictions, and currently we're in the implementation stage. We're reaching out to all of our CII customers, asking them to stop the irrigation using potable water for non-functional turf. If they're using recycled water, if that irrigation system also irrigates trees or perennial shrubs, then they do have an exemption. So there's continued legislation that focuses on ratcheting down the indoor water conservation. There's a bill, the Hertzberg bill, that is proposing potentially to reduce that 55 gallons per capita per day that I mentioned to 42 gallons per capita per day by 2030. We have taken a position of opposition on that bill. One of the reasons why for us, it's a zero-sum proposal is we recycle all of our water. 100% of the water used indoors comes back to us as recycled water. And that water offsets our need to import water from Northern California, from the Colorado River. So if there's additional reduction of indoor use, essentially our recycled water supplies would be reduced, and thus we'd need to import more. So for us as an agency that recycles 100% of our water, this just doesn't quite, it's not fair to us and others who recycle all their recycled water. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So both Eastern and Western have been very proactive in doing outreach to our customers. We've had regional messaging campaigns, local conservation initiatives, and the expanded turf replacement. Both Eastern and Western offer financial incentive on top of what Metropolitan offers. Essentially, we will offer $3 a square foot for removal of turf. We are both have activated our water shortage contingency plan. Western is at stage 2, Eastern at 3A. Essentially, we're both calling on our customers to keep up their efforts, stay within their water budgets, and frankly, the overall majority of our customers are within their budget. For Eastern, it's 80% of our customers stay within the water budgets, which is amazing. So we are continuing to ask for them to keep up their diligence. But in addition to asking them to be efficient in their water use, we're also continuing to develop local resources. That includes groundwater cleanup that both Eastern and Western are undertaking around the March 8 Reserve Base. Also desalination programs that we are expanding, groundwater banking, having the facilities in place so that when we do have those wet periods, we're able to move that water quickly and recharge our groundwater afterwards. Recycled water, both potable, indirect potable, as well as for landscape irrigation. Both agencies have been very much on the front lines of expanding Purple Pipe and stormwater capture. So we believe that we need to continue investing in these local resources. And frankly, for us, the growth that is occurring gives us the revenue stream to help expand those local resources. And the recycled water allows us to, as I mentioned earlier, recycle all the indoor water use. So all of these local supply projects are key to making sure that we're resilient as we navigate through the current drought conditions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to Craig to talk about solve the water crisis.
All right, thanks, Joe. All right, so Joe's giving you the kind of the gloom and doom about the situation we're in. What I want to talk about is the future. So what are we doing about it? So this is where the water managers sit down together and we talk about how is water in California being developed and what's going on with our future water supply. California is what, the 5th largest economy in the world if it was its own country. And what Joe's talking about is basically the state going into kind of a survival mode with water. And how could the 5th largest economy in the world be out of water? It frightens the managers, the water managers. So Solve the Water Crisis is a coalition of general managers that have formed to really try and change the trajectory of the state's water planning process. And the statewide system, so Joe was talking about Northern California water, we're talking about Lake Oroville. Lake Oroville feeds irrigation in the Central Valley of the state. It feeds Northern California water agencies. It feeds Southern California water agencies. And it's in survival mode. It has a 5% allocation, which means that if you have rights on the state water project, you only get 5% of those rights. That's not enough water for this economy and for the state to continue to operate in the manner that we're used to operating. And so this coalition wants to change that. We want the state to start developing more water supply. We've done an outstanding job developing local water resources, but this state survives on the combination of capturing snowpack, snow melt from snowpack, water that comes down as rain, and Colorado River water, and our local groundwater basins. The state hasn't increased the amount of storage on the state water system in 5 decades. Think of what the population of the state has done over 5 decades, and the state hasn't invested anything in trying to increase the amount of storage. Where are the reservoirs to help support the population and the economy of the state? That's what we want to change. So how are we doing it? Next slide. So the mission of the coalition is, because we're public officials, we can't advocate, we can educate and inform. So we want to elevate the water crisis. We've all heard this over our lives. If you've lived in California, there's drought this year, drought next year, it rains, it's over. We're tired of being in this cycle as managers. We want to get out of this cycle. We want to change the water supply so that when we go into a 2-year dry period like we're in right now, which is actually a 3-year, we shouldn't be out of water. Our reservoirs were full in 2017 and it got dry in 2020 and we're out of water. Can you imagine only 3 years of resilience in our water system? That's not right. And so we want to change that. So we got to get the word out to policymakers and thought leaders across the state. It's the legislature, it's the administration. They need to understand that we need more water supply and we need to invest in it. So this needs to become a top state agenda item. And if you're listening to Sacramento, it is not. It is not a significant item, and it sure needs to be. So that's what our coalition's trying to change. Next slide. So what are we talking about? We want to build surface and groundwater storage. And then we need to be able to move water around in the state. The water primarily falls in Northern California, but the majority of the demands are in Southern California. And of course, there's the huge ag industry in between. So water has to be able to be moved all across the state. We're moving water from the Colorado River. We have a very engineered water system in this state, probably the most sophisticated water system in the world. And we need to continue to improve that. And we need to cut back on the regulatory setbacks that we constantly have to move water. So we'll capture water. In December, it was very wet because we couldn't move water through the Delta. The Metropolitan couldn't move water through the Delta. 250,000 acre feet of water went to the ocean. It didn't need to. That could have been moved to reservoirs, groundwater storage basins, surface storage reservoirs. 250,000 acre feet. That's in 2 weeks of rainfall. We got to improve the regulatory environment so that we don't have so many environmental restrictions as we try and move water around. And then we need to continue as we've been doing. We don't want to cut off the supply of money that supports our local project development. We need to continue that. Next slide. So the coalition's getting a lot of traction. We've got over 24 members now. We've got another 50 agencies that are interested. We're partnering with Aqua and CMUA and the Southern California Water Coalition. And we're getting a lot of partnerships with the private sector. That's where we actually need this group together. You know, we need our local electeds. We need the business community. We need the chambers. We need BIA. This needs to be a rallying cry for everyone. We need to develop water supply if we're going to continue to be the 5th largest economy in the world. So we're getting great traction. We've been picked up with op-eds all over the place. They've been running across the state. We've got Northern California agencies, Central California agencies, Southern California agencies in the coalition, but we need your support. Our local electeds have to understand this and they have to advocate for us back in Sacramento and locally. Next slide. So how can you help? Next slide. So you can certainly share all the information. So there's lots of social media posts that are coming out from your local water agencies. I know Western and Eastern are very active, trying to get people to cut back. Our first priority is we got to survive this drought. We're in survival. We got to get through this drought. But the water managers don't want to be here again. So then the priority moves towards what are we going to do to keep from being here? As Joe said, non-functional turf, you cannot water it now. It should be removed. Replace it with drought-tolerant vegetation. Please invite the water agencies to your public meetings so that we can tell the public. The public still isn't, I don't know if they're not buying into the drought, but the 15% conservation that the governor has called for isn't hitting. In fact, a lot of agencies have increased their water usage. Now, a lot of that has to do with the comparison periods. You know, you're comparing a very dry period with a wet period 2 years ago, so the numbers don't look good. But certainly there's not overwhelming cutbacks like we need. So there's not more dramatic cutbacks when we get to the fall. But we also need to market to our elected officials. We need to bring up the importance of water and make it a priority. Everyone should be talking about this. You know, it's California's gold, right? And people take it for granted. And it really is time that we stop taking it for granted. We need to invest, and we need to invest a lot of money in our water infrastructure so our grandkids have water just like we had growing up in our area. So, and then finally, express your support for the Solve the Water Crisis and share our social media posts. I can't figure out why anyone would not want to be part of the movement. We're asking for more water for the state. That's our primary purpose, more water. Next slide. All right, that's a lot. Joe and I are here to answer questions.
Thank you so much. Janice, do we have any members of the public who have any questions or comments?
No, ma'am.
All right, do we have any? It looks like Karen Spiegel, you're first up.
First thing is, Joe, you need a better picture of Phil. Sorry, that thing. And then we picked it up with WRCOG. That picture is floating around.
I'll work on that.
One thing, I'm going to go backwards, my notes. Okay, the 24 confirmed members of the coalition, it looked, you know, all the water districts, are we missing any from this area? Or have you captured them all?
Well, I wouldn't say we've captured all. We're doing very well locally, and that's because I have a lot of contacts locally and Joe has a lot of contacts locally. We're doing very well. We actually need a lot more support in the Central Valley and Northern California. So if you've got friends in Northern California, they have the exact same messages. You know, as I speak about the coalition, I hear a lot of people say, well, Northern California never liked Southern California. We like to fight about water. That is not the case. We are all on the same page. they're feeling the same pinch that we're feeling, and they have the same message points that we have in Southern California. So help us out in the central and north.
I have a question. So if some of our larger water usage, other than exterior outside, but things like our laundry and the car washing, if we all went to a company like a laundromat or a car wash, it's not lowering that water usage, is it?
Go ahead, Joe.
Well, no, Supervisor Spiegel, that's a great question. So for example, a car wash will recycle the water multiple times. So it is much, much more efficient than obviously washing your own vehicle. So we would definitely encourage going to a car wash where that water is reused multiple times. With laundromats, there are efficiencies with centralized laundromats, but again, it just goes back to the individual's personal practices. So that one, I think, can be debated, but overall, I think what you're referring to, Supervisor, is that often centralized use of water tends to have higher efficiency. I would agree with that.
I certainly don't want to have recycled water on my clothes, but that's all right. And then I have to say, I don't know what Westerns is, but 80% of your customers stay within their budget.
That's right. Now, it's been a multi-year, decades-long effort of educating them, helping them put in drip irrigation systems in their yards, doing audits that we offer for no charge to our customers, in terms of going out to their households, looking at how they use their water. So it's been a long time investment for us, and then frankly, Western does the same exact thing to help our customers be as efficient as they can, especially outdoors. That's 60% of the water used by a household is outdoors. That's where we believe the opportunity is, and that's what we should focus on.
Yeah, Supervisor Spiegel, Western's the same. We're right in the same range. And the challenge that both of our agencies have is that our board took on water conservation a decade ago, and we have cut, Western and Eastern have cut our water usage basically in half over the last 10 years. So when the governor says, well, we need a 15% cutback this year, we've been cutting back for a decade. So it's really difficult, given how efficient we are, to cut back more. And that's the problem with these statewide mandates or statewide requests. We're far more efficient than other agencies in other areas. So we just don't have a lot of room to go. We need to look at other places, but we can be more efficient outdoors. So there's definitely space we can go outdoors.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. It's very interesting. I just had a couple of questions. First off, we keep hearing about desalinization. Is there any hope for that to happen in the state of California?
Well, yes, we're doing it. So if you Eastern and Western, we both have groundwater desalters. So we're desalinating brackish groundwater that can't be used for anything else. Right. We're not along the coast, so connecting us, plumbing us to ocean water is expensive. So we've been utilizing the same exact technology and basically better utilizing some groundwater. But with that said, both of our agencies are involved in a study right now where we're actually looking at the economics of looking at ocean desal, and that would be, either moving water from the ocean after it's treated or exchanging water with other agencies that are along the coast. So we're looking at it. The tougher it gets to find water, the more driven we are to spend more money on it. But the cost is 3 to 4 times more expensive than bringing water from Northern California, and even more expensive than pumping our own groundwater.
All right.
And Kevin, I would just add that groundwater desalinization is a big part of our local water supply portfolio. In fact,
I was referring to the ocean. I knew what was happening interior, but I'm glad you clarified it. What's the situation at the Delta these days?
Well, the Delta is an ongoing battle. The good news is right now Metropolitan has been working on a tunnel to get water underneath the delta. That was kind of set back when the governor came in and he kind of changed the course of the project from a 2-tunnel project to a 1-tunnel project. Metropolitan has spent 3 years with DWR redoing all the CEQA documents for a 1-tunnel project. That CEQA document is going to be released this summer. So hopefully we can, get moving again on a delta, what we call a delta fix, being able to move that storm water that happens and the snow melt that happens north of the delta through the delta and bypass all those environmental conditions.
What was the reason to go from 2 to 1?
That's a good political question. I think that it was a little bit of a balancing act between what the environmental interests wanted, which is no tunnel, and what the water resources group wanted, which was twin tunnels. So I think it was a little bit of a middle ground.
And then what's the delay in building reservoirs?
That is a great question. That is really the push of our coalition. Is there's an ongoing fight with special interest groups, environmental special interest groups, that do not want more storage built in the state. So you look at Sites Reservoir, which is an off-stream reservoir, which is getting closer to being built, but it's been struggling for 2 decades to get built. We need to build more reservoirs, without a doubt.
Okay.
And we need your support.
I have just 3 more questions, which is sort of totally off. So as cities, we're being asked to build all kinds of housing. And one of the things that we do, because the housing, generally speaking, can be very inappropriate to where they want us to put it. So we're putting in green belts to try to protect, people who spent their whole lives buying a single family house. And so we're trying to create a buffer. Basically what you're saying is, though, they can just let those buffers die.
Kevin, not necessarily. I think if there's opportunities to use recycled water for those green belts.
I understand that, but we're in the middle of, Norco's, we've kind of got a pretty good recycle program going, but as you know, it's extremely expensive for a municipality to start pumping recycled water to some of these various, some of these developments. And I mean, they're really being jammed down our throat, and it just seems kind of strange that we're being forced to build housing when there's no water. It just seems odd, and yet I keep being told, oh no, there's water, but there isn't any water. So it's just really frustrating that the state of California is doing nothing to expand the water facilities in some ways and getting in the way. And it's funny that environmentalists are fighting water when at the same time they don't mind us putting concrete over all the dirt as much as possible. It's nuts. And then my last one is one of our problems in the city of Norco is we are a Santa Ana wind tunnel. So a lot of time the lawns are actually the only thing, because if you put drought resistant plants, the lawns are actually the only thing that protect us from some of the dirt that comes into the homes. How is that something you can justify, or is that just still just considered an ornamental lawn? At the same time, it kind of protects your property and the dust inside. I know it's a silly question, but these are things we actually deal with, and these are the kind of things that our residents come at us with.
Yeah, I've never heard the argument about we need the grass to protect us from dirt erosion. We've certainly heard.
Let me clarify it. What happens is when you put in a desert scape, for example, you now have DG and dirt on top of the ground. And when you get 60 to 100 mile an hour winds, all of that dirt moves. And so that's one of the issues that some of the people have brought up that they have trouble with. I don't know if you've been to Norco during a Santa Ana windstorm. It's bizarre because Norco's, 75 miles an hour. Corona is 15. I don't know if these are valid arguments or not, but these are the kind of things we talk about at our level in our community. You've got sometimes windstorm. I mean, it's a reality, but I'm not certain that it's something you can justify.
Yeah, no, we hear you. What I think one of the things that we try and be very proactive about is showing examples of drought tolerant landscapes to customers. We have a fabulous book that shows all kinds of different palettes. So it doesn't have to just be DG and cactus. There's all sorts of drought tolerant plants that, you know, continue to cover the dirt, and they look beautiful and they're very effective on saving water. And, you know, we've got those resources on our website, and we're more than, and we've shared them with the city. So I know the city staff has those, but we're more than happy to help.
So I guess back to my housing question, are we gonna have enough water in the next couple of years to build the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of apartment homes that we're being asked? We don't have enough fire, we don't have enough police, we don't have enough schools, we don't have enough electricity, and we don't have enough water. You're
preaching. Sorry, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah, you know, welcome to my world and Joe's world. We hear the cities that are getting state mandates to build more housing, and then we have to follow suit and provide water. And that's why this coalition was formed and why we have heartburn, because exactly like you laid out, on one hand, the state's saying build more housing, and on the other hand, they're saying we're not going to do anything to develop future water resources. That's why we need to make this an issue, so Sacramento understands that those two things cannot be exclusive. You have to have both. If you want more housing, you got to build water resources to support the housing and the population. And you'll hear a lot of talk about disadvantaged communities and how we need more low-income housing. You know, no sector is going to be damaged more than the disadvantaged communities when we start running short on water. So what we have to have water resources, and we have to capture more. That's the bottom line.
Great. Thank you, Crystal, for the time.
And if maybe I can add just a couple more thoughts. We share the frustration, Kevin, that you're sharing with us as far as the dilemma in terms of the emphasis on more housing while we have these water concerns. But a couple of things to think about. For Eastern, for example, over the last 20 years, we served a population of about 356,000 back in 1999. Recent census data, we're serving almost 900,000. So we more than doubled our population, almost tripled. During that same 20-year period, we actually have reduced our reliance on imported water. We're importing less water today than we were 20 years ago. And while we've seen all this extensive growth, and the reason is because of all the local resource projects like the recycled water system, also our groundwater desalination. We just commissioned our third desalination facility in the city of Menifee, and it produces 5.5 million gallons per day from brackish water that's otherwise unusable. That facility, just that facility alone, is going to help us serve about 15,000 households in the city. So I think all of those things we can do locally will make a significant impact. The statewide investments and frankly, the generational investments that Craig is referring to, be it Sites Reservoir or the Delta conveyance, we absolutely need those. But we're also realistic to know that those are decades long projects. They're not gonna come to fruition probably beyond the next 10 years, but we got to get started today. If we don't get started today, we're never going to get there. So we recognize those are generational investments, that they're absolutely needed. In the meantime, we have a number of things that we can undertake locally to help us navigate through the current drought.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. James Stewart?
Yes. So this is more of a statement with a question at the end. So I was on the Rancho Water Board 2011 to 2015. And what I walked away with is the state's only interest is to reduce consumption. And I found that very short-sighted. And so I was kind of wondering, is the state going to invest, now that we got $100 billion surplus, why are we not using that and using that logic to say, let's fix this problem? You want us to build more houses? We need water. And so without storage, without using water, like you said, I mean, when I was there, they released down the San Joaquin River 1.5 million acre feet for one endangered fish that came across. And so obviously they don't understand the value of water. And so how do we make them understand? How do we get them to stand up and do what they're supposed to be doing? We wouldn't be in this situation if we fixed it a long time ago, but they just want to kick the can down the road. And I know when I was there, we had a budget issue. I mean, we were basically going in the red every year. Well, now we've got a fat, bank account. We need to somehow push through that, the knuckleheads at Sacramento, and get them to understand this is the time to do this. So how do we get to these people?
Solve the Water Crisis Coalition. So you're saying exactly what we're saying. There's a $97 billion budget surplus. The projects that Joe mentioned are Sites is a $6 billion project. The Delta Tunnel is a $10 billion project. That's $16 billion. That sounds like a lot of money. We're sitting on $97 billion in our savings account. There's no reason that money can't be set aside to solve a generational problem, but they have to hear it. And the problem is that what you'll hear out of Sacramento is, don't worry, we put $2 million in the budget for drought. We put $1 billion or $7 billion over the next 5 years to solve water challenges. We need $30 billion or $40 billion to solve projects that are going to be built over the next 30 years. It's a whole order of magnitude off from the rhetoric that you'll hear. But if we don't start hearing from people like yourself and the political leaders in Southern California, Sacramento's not going to do anything.
So how do we, like me as a city councilman in Temecula, how do I express this to Sacramento? I'm joining the coalition. Do I join as an individual, or can I join as a city of Temecula?
Join as a city. And
Okay.
we've got all sorts of collateral material that the city can use. And the city has other resources. You can go through, the mayor's coalition, the city managers groups, the business, the chamber. You have your own advocacy at a city that you can utilize. So it's every tool that we have to get to Sacramento. And I think our local delegation, they need to embrace that we need major investment.
Is there any way you can actually send me an email with that information in it?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
do
If
that.
you can, you see on the slide, C. Miller at WMWD, shoot me a request and we will follow up with you.
Right, Craig, this is Chris Gray from WRCOG real quick. We can also attach it and we can coordinate with you to attach materials to the agenda. We send out an agenda summary, so that
right.
might be another way to distribute it.
Yeah, happy to share. We need to get the word out, and I appreciate your passion. You're feeling the same thing that we are.
Okay,
Now
good.
is the time.
Yeah, I like
I-
his
and I-
idea.
And I think too, in the text in the chat box too, Michael Hadley from our agency, as well as Sarah McDonald, have been putting some information for contact folks. But I think sending a couple of text messages back and forth with my colleague, Mr. Pauly over there, I think one of the things that we need to really do is, this is the ask. This is the ask. We need everybody to jump on board of this program, and we need WRCOG to go ahead and agendize this as an ask for the coalition, for you guys to partner up with us so that we can start really pushing the message. And then if you have contacts in other areas of the state with other colleagues and organizations that you participate with on a regular basis, we certainly want to hear and connect with those folks so that we can push that message forward. So Phil, if you have anything to add to that.
No, I concur. I think it would strengthen the coalition if we had the WRCOG member cities and other agencies join on, and perhaps WRCOG as a whole. So maybe we could add that to a future agenda item.
All right, we're gonna have to wrap it up soon. So James, are you?
I'm done. Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
good.
Christian?
Thank you. A lot of the questions I had have already been covered, so I won't rehash those, but I want to say thank you for the presentation. One city I didn't see included in that coalition was the city of Eastville. I'd like to join that as a representative from the city of Eastville. We'd like to take a look at the material. I know that you're going to share the links. If you can include us as well, I'd appreciate it. And so many of the things that I was interested in stating were stated already by my colleagues. James, I appreciate your points on desalination, along with Kevin Bash, our council member from Norco. It's just really curious to me, and something that we already know, that our entire state borders the ocean, but yet we're constantly in a water crisis. And the percentage reduction after percentage reductions, at some point, it's not going to be possible or feasible. So when we look to the future, I appreciate the coalition looking to solve the problem for the future. I really hope it results in some more desalination projects and an increase in reservoir builds. Anything I can do to help on that mission, I'd like to do it. So please add Eastville and my name to that list. And thank you all for the presentation.
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you. I ditto all of the comments of my colleagues so far, so I won't reiterate those. Couple of questions. One is, has the coalition reached out to try to partner with Cal Cities?
We're reaching out to the statewide organizations. There's a little bit of differentiation between advocacy groups and the public agencies that are making this up. So we want to treat them as partner agencies, but not member agencies. So we're reaching out to all of them. We have a really long list of all the statewide agencies. So we are doing that.
Because I think that, the more people we can get on board, and I will certainly carry forward to my colleagues on the Hemet City Council that we joined the coalition. One other question, and I've commented to representatives from Cal Cities, the frustration that I have that on a planet that is 4/5 water, drought should not even be in our vocabulary. There are ways of converting salt water into potable water. And we do it on cruise ships every day, and the Navy does it, and there's no reason why we can't do it. I realize we're inland, and there's a distinction, and I applaud the efforts that have been happening with our groundwater. But there's no reason that we should not be assertively pursuing getting water from the ocean. And we live in a state that has always suffered from getting water. And the other recommendation I have is that we look to our neighbors to the north. We've got water in Oregon and Washington that runs off to the ocean, and it's snowpack water. And all we need to do is find a way to get it into the northern end of our state water project. And we've already got the infrastructure in place to take it all the way to the south. So it seems like a simple fix, but common sense seems to be a rare commodity in Sacramento. But I would like to see somebody carry forward that suggestion that we use some of that surplus money that the state has, and instead of putting it on high-speed rail, let's put it into getting water. So I'll get off my soapbox now. Thank you.
I hear that comment about high-speed rail almost every presentation I make about the coalition. So you're not alone in that argument.
Thank you, Russ. So the only question, well, I don't even have a question, it's just a comment that I have, and it gets so irritating. There's so many, so much science out there right now, so much technology out there right now that we don't utilize. The cloud seeding has been around for a long time. There's just one little, thing that might help. I don't understand why they don't look at these types of things. But since we're late, I don't expect a comment, but thank you both for coming. We truly appreciate the updates, and I'm sure if we have your contact information, we will be asking for a presentation at our own committees, at our own city council meetings. So thank you so much.
Appreciate that. To put your mind at ease, SAPA is looking at cloud seeding, and Joe's agency and my agency are both supportive of that. So we are looking at that just like everything else. Thank you everyone for your time. I know we ran long, but it's really important, and I appreciate your attention.
Thank you. Moving on to item 7, report from the Technical Advisory Committee Chair, Jeff Van Wagner is here. Jeff, there you go. You're up.
Thanks. No report this week.
Or this month?
Perfect. That was fast. Moving on, Brian Tisdale from Calcog had to leave. He said there was no report from SADAG. They were dark this month. SAPA, OA committee, Ted Hoffman.
Yes, I know the guys from EMWD in Western probably watered you to death, but just so you know, the OA board and the SAPA board, they received 24 projects for the Prop 1 Round 2 funding for the next couple of years. Out of that, only 5 were from Riverside County. The rest were from San Bernardino and Orange County. But they also had the disadvantaged communities. There were 6 of those in this project. And the 6 represented about $13 million worth of funding. And there was 18 total they're going to try to split $54 million in funding. And part of the highlights, and this is what for our area, for West Riverside County, funding that they're going to be looking at, and they have until July 19th to make their final recommendations. The Rurupa Community Service District, they're working on their Intervalley Water Quality and Water Resiliency Project. Lake Elsinore and San Jack are working on the Lake Elsinore Algae Harvesting Project to clean their watershed up. And then the Riverside Highlands Water Company is working on a water wells project for nitrate removal. And then, like Craig said, the SAPA is working on the Santa Ana River Watershed Water Modification Project. That's the seeding of the clouds. And then Western is working on the water quality of recycled water use in the groundwater recharge. And that has been the focus of the Prop 1 monies this year, is recharging and recycling water throughout. And I know it's frustrating when you hear, especially when there's nothing going on, but that state money is Prop 1 money, and we'll see how it plays out after in July. All right, that's it. Concludes.
Thank you. And Ben for SCAQMD.
Afternoon, everybody. We're actually dark this month for AQMD, but again, I'll highlight that next month we have our first real public meeting on the full disclosure of our air quality management plan, which will be our 4-year plan for air quality going into the future. This will be critical as we work forward, especially as we look down the fact that, again, we're having we're frankly, again, not going to meet the federal attainment levels for 2023. So this will be an important meeting. We expect to have a lot of conversation at that meeting, a lot of public comment, and I'll have much more to report back on next month from that, or the following month when we're back in session.
Thank you. Anybody from SCAG Regional Council Policy Committee representatives? All right, seeing none, we're going to go on to my report. Janice, can you come in here for just a moment, please? While Janice,
on my way.
thank you. While Janice is coming in here. Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody. It was a wonderful event, and it was so good to see you all in person. That really was a highlight of the event for me, was seeing everybody in person, being able to actually see your face and say hi instead of seeing the little box on the TV or just a name. So I'm glad for that. We're just waiting for just a moment for Janice. It is her birthday today, so we have some flowers for her. As soon as she walks in, we're going to wish her back. Janice, come here. Over on this side. We want to wish you a happy birthday.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's so sweet. Thank you.
They're silently applauding.
They're on screen. Thank you.
Have a wonderful birthday.
Thank you very
We
much.
appreciate you so much. All right, we're going to move on to the Kurt Wilson for the Executive Director Report.
All right, just a couple quick updates. Some of you have indicated an interest in sort of getting more involved in specific topics or specific things. So we have sort of the formal ad hoc committees, and we have beyond the formal channels, we have a few other things coming up. If you have an interest, please let me know. We'll be looking for some volunteers on a few things. One of them is going to be around advocacy or legislation, which would actually fit nicely with the topic you just covered. We've also got things like getting ready for General Assembly for 2023. In next several months, we'll have some budget items that we'd love some early input on from anybody who wants to do something offline. And same thing for finances, we'd love to be able to provide some sort of offline updates on things we're doing within that world as well. And then as a calendar update, we'll be reaching out to you for strategic plan refresher. We're a little more than halfway through the first year of the strategic plan. We'd like to check in, proposing the same concept of sort of in person, just having that conversation again around strategic plan, give you a more detailed update of where we are, give you a chance to tweak anything. And then since we are now in year 2, I'll be looking to schedule some one-on-one time with you again, coming back out and just sort of checking in with you and your agencies. In a perfect world would include your city manager and possibly even your alternate where that's appropriate. And that'll conclude my report.
Nice. So do we have any items for future agenda? All right, seeing none, any general announcements? All right, Kurt, would you please announce the next meeting? And we do have a closed session.
Thank you. The next meeting of the executive committee will be Monday, August 1st, 2 o'clock, again with the hybrid option.
Thank you. So at this time, we're going to move into closed session. Are there any members of the public who want to speak on closed session items before we adjourn to closed session?
I have no
Seeing none.
requests, but committee member Bash has his hand raised.
Kevin?
Yeah, sorry, this was for, I was trying to get my hand raised. Are we going to be agendizing the water issue that we discussed today?
We're happy to.
Yep, I think so.
Yeah, I just couldn't get my hand raised quickly enough.
That's okay.
Can I make a recommendation that we do that?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and agendize it with a specific action of support.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Devon, do we have any announcements to make prior to going into closed session?
We do have 4 cases on the closed session agenda that are listed on the listed on the agenda face pages. We will try to move through them quickly.
Thank you. So there's no anticipated report out on closed session, so we will be adjourning from closed session. At this time, staff will be moving everyone into the waiting room except for committee members, legal counsel, and relevant staff. At this time, I ask everyone to turn off on your cameras. You won't have to keep them on the entire time, but just till we do the transition. So please turn on your cameras.
Janice, I need to switch to another device. I'll be coming on my cell phone just momentarily.
Okay, thank you.
Janice, can you make me host?
Yep, I'm getting there, just a second.
Everyone, while we wait, Councilmember Casillas has her baby, so I suggest we give her 2 votes.
Ah, there you go. Look at that. How cute.
Okay, Ben is back in. Did you want to do a roll call before?
Yeah, let's make sure we have the quorum. Go ahead.
City of Banning, Beaumont,
Mike, Laura. Unfortunately, I'll have to be leaving soon. I apologize.
thank you. Calamasa,
Here.
Canyon Lake,
Here.
Corona,
Here.
Eastville,
Here.
Kemet,
Russ Brown here.
Rupa Valley,
Here.
Lake Elsinore, Menifee. Matt Leesmeyer.
Yeah, I'm here. Yep,
Thank you.
sorry.
Moreno Valley,
Here.
Murrieta, Norco,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Riverside, San Jacinto,
Here.
Temecula,
Here.
Wildemar,
Here.
County District 1,
Here.
District 2,
Here.
District 3, District 5, District 5,
Yeah.
Eastern Municipal Water District,
Present.
and Western Municipal Water District.
Present.
We have quorum. I am relinquishing hosting to Chris Gray. Chris, you have it. Look, can you stop the recording? Sorry,
Yes.